And that's where I actually just followed a train of thinking that I was already on, that it was about AI actually. It was that how people use programs and software and computers to facilitate their imagination, or instead of their imagination. I think a program would just come out that was a piece of AI software that was able to write its own opera that had just come out in the news, and I thought, that really annoys me, because I kind of think I come from a standpoint that all our human minds, all the people who don't get a chance to use their minds to its fullest extent, we could all be writing operas. So anyway, I kind of thought I could be, instead of AI, I'll be this human intelligence that can work with people to show them what imagination they have got. And this is how this idea came across, of interviewing people about their dream home, about an image in their heads, which they would construct in their heads, because I would take them on an interview process, and then I would sort of transcribe that image into a painting, almost like I'd be the printer, the computer and the printer, and get this idea out. Except it'd go through me as a human, and the performance aspect would be how I'd work with them as another human to get those ideas from them. The phone call was about the anonymity, to take someone by just what they were going to tell me about what was inside their head, so I couldn't prejudge them. And Josh would kind of like that fact that someone could sit in their armchair, be whoever they wanted, and just tell me whatever they wanted, and there was a freedom in that. So I did, we put it out on the ANDfestival website. We did some rehearsals of the script, so I'd got the script, I rehearsed it on Joshua and I think a friend of his, so that we knew it would work, and I created the visuals, so we went through the whole process. And then it was put on ANDfestival, people paid money, and then they booked a time slot, and then I would ring them at the appointed time. And it would be exactly 30 minutes, and I'd explain that so that it couldn't run over. I'd explain sort of the parameters and boundaries and how they could always stop the interviews if they wanted to. They were all really, really interesting people from all sorts of parts of the UK and actually an Ireland, and came from different standpoints. So some people might, not have engaged in an art project before. So I was talking to people who didn't know what to expect, but once you got talking about this image in their head they were constructing as the conversation unravelled, there'd be a meeting of minds, because as soon as they would talk about a dream idea, the reference points they'd use, like they'd go, I'd have 1970s this, or I'd have some 1980s that, or I would be out in Australia because we went on to Australia once, and I'd want the place to be a villa, or you have these little reference points, and then I go, oh yeah, I remember those, or oh wow, Australia sounds brilliant. I just rang from my studio, and these people would be at their homes or in their offices. I did have to do one when I was on holiday in Scotland, because these interviews happened to be when I was away with my children. So I was in a static caravan ringing somebody down in Manchester. So it didn't matter. I could be anywhere actually to make the phone calls. And then I would sketch as they talked, so that it was actually being transferred into a visual. But then I would then work that up into a kind of a sort of architectural illustrative watercolour that I would then post them. I was interviewing a guy, this kind of happened as a sort of pattern in a lot of the phone calls. You're asking about this dream house, but they might have to talk about their current house, or there'll be some story that starts to unfold about how they've come to now why they want a dream house. And it's just amazing that their love of their family becomes what comes through, even though it seems like a materialistic question, about, what would your grand design's house be? Actually, in the end, like I had this one guy who described his current garden. He says, I don't want a new house, but I just would knock the kitchen wall out and I'd have a conservatory. We've wanted to do it for years. There was a bit of a story around that. But he described the garden that his wife had created, and when he described that, you could tell, because you only heard a voice, you didn't look at anything else, somebody's tone and pace and rhythm, their language, the whole delivery changed when they were talking about something that was slightly sacred. The next year, I interviewed less people, but I actually didn't do it over the phone. I sat them down and I recorded my hand drawing as they spoke to show that idea of we all have different kind of cognition, sort of different way that I understand. If I draw at the same time, I take it in a different way. I'm using different bits of my brain. So I exhibited the finished works with this film of my hand moving and people speaking, so people could see how an artwork was created. It could create from nothing, just an idea. Then I collaborated with a puppeteer where we looked again at the performance aspect in that we swapped me. So instead of me interviewing on the phone or in person, I'd worked for many years with a puppeteer called Ali McCaw, and we'd got these two puppets we developed in the past, half-size puppets. One was called the Major, one's called Ruff Ruffson. And you'd have this contraption made out of sort of bric-a-brac, old bits of furniture that they'd then pitch up in a shopping centre, create this mobile home, this kind of home. And then the Major would sit down at his table, which was an ironing board. His front door was like an old washstand, and invite people in. He'd go, yeah, just come through the front door and shut the door behind you, which was actually a washstand. People would kind of suspend disbelief due to the art of the ability of the puppeteer. They are now kind of in the Major, who was a puppet, into the Major's house, sat down, having a cup of tea with him, a pretend cup of tea, and then he would say, I'm thinking of moving here, and what's it like to live in this area? And he would start to draw, the home of their dreams, and he'd go, just take it down to the planning office, if just say the Major drew it out for you, you'll get it passed. People kind of just had this kind of magical effect, because he's this Major character, he's like this old-fashioned old man, and that gets different. That's disinhibiting. The puppets kind of stand between that kind of reality and fiction, that a place between. It straddles kind of reality and fiction, so people feel safe because they know it's not real. This thing is animated, but it's not real because it's from a different world, as it were. So people would kind of confide things. So I received quite a lot of funding from 3 town councils and a borough council, because they were so fascinated by what we were finding out from people about what it was to live where they lived.